No, and you can't even survive by just playing gigs. Here, anyway. You almost have to pay to play. Just the expense of getting around and, you know, getting to and from places, especially with gear. If you don't own a car, well, it's hard to keep a car. We don't really have one anymore. It's been a while. Whether you use one of the ride-share services or the subway, you know, you're paying either way.
What brought you out here initially?
It was a place where my wife and I just both wanted to live, and she was able to get a transfer, and it was sort of the next logical choice for us, yeah, at the time. So, did
you move from Cleveland?
No, we were in Charlotte, North Carolina for a couple of years.
Okay. I mean, that's a pretty nice spot, and there's a lot happening in the Triangle musically.
Yeah, I found some kindred spirits there that made music, and it wasn't too bad.
You're in so many bands and play on so many bands' records that I don't know how much geography really matters to you at this point.
New York is still a place that you have proximity to some studios and you know, still sort of an entertainment hub, and you can sort of convene with more people that way and come into contact with more, I guess, more professionals if you really seek it out.
In terms of the last few years, and I actually used, you know, as you know, I used to do this show like exclusively in person, and was very stubborn about. I missed out on a lot of really great interviews because I insisted that everything be done in person, and then the pandemic happened, and you know, I started using this setup. For you, was there a certain amount that you could do remotely?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of projects that we still do remotely, to a degree, and some not, but, I prefer the in-person, and pandemic or no pandemic, sometimes that's just hard to do.
You strike me as somebody who really thrives with collaboration.
Well, not necessarily, but I do find that it helps when I have an engineer. I prefer that, having an engineer to kind of, you know, do everything and do the housework, and as far as housekeeping, whatever you call it, with computer files, this and that, and engineering the session, and I can sort of do that, but I'm really not that great at it.
We're both in Queens, and Queens was like the epicenter of COVID in those first few months. How'd you make it through?
I don't know. Just we're sort of really careful, I guess. I mean, eventually, it comes around to everybody, and we did get it eventually, but it wasn't until the next year, really. I don't think, anyway. There might have even been something very early on, but who knows. But just were careful and followed the protocols and stayed in, found where to order food, you know.
A good percentage of your job was just kind of ground to a halt because touring went away, and you know, were you like doing a lot of songwriting? Were you doing a lot of recording?
Not really. There were still recording projects going on. I did a one of those, what do you call them? COVID shows. They're not called COVID shows.
Okay, like a live stream.
Yeah, a live stream show. It was a way to make a little bit. I made a little bit of money from donations from that, and it was a solo thing. So I just played for an hour, hour and a half, something like that, and it was part of a bigger series where they had other artists play on different nights. But God, that was sort of early on. That was around May or so, 2020, and then a couple months later, Guided by Voices did one through Noon Chorus. That service where you can sell tickets and people can watch the online show. And we went to Dayton to a club to tape that. And that went really well, I'd say. It's not around anymore.
Maybe it doesn't always feel this way when you're in it, but from the outside, it seems like you spin a lot of plates. It seems like you've got a ton of different projects all more or less happening at the same time. Like during that period when you were forced to stay home and forced to slow down in a sense, did it drive you nuts?
Not really. I was enjoying it. I sort of enjoyed not having to go anywhere or see anybody or do anything. But, the other side of the coin was you didn't know what the future looked like, and if it was survivable, and you're hoping your family and friends and people close to you would make it through as well. But in a way, it was exciting because you didn't know really what was going to happen next.
When I was talking to people really early on, like some of them would admit to me in hushed tones that they were actually really enjoying it because it's not something that you, and especially in the early days, want to broadcast it. That
exactly
there's this big benefit for you. Well, obviously a lot of people are suffering.
No, of course, yeah, for sure. Some people did come out and say it on social media, but I'm not the type to really say anything on social media, so I wasn't gonna do that.
Was it fruitful for you in terms of songwriting or creativity?
Yeah, I got some things written. The band did 2 or 3 records that year during lockdown. That year and the next year, I guess you could say.
That's a slow year for Guided by Voices, right?
Yeah, it was normal as far as recording output goes, but it wasn't as far as live shows go, obviously. So that was sort of normal. There were other things happening. Bambi Kino did we did something. Well, one thing was the tribute to Adam Schlesinger, and he had engineered some really early Bambi Kino things, and so we were part of this sort of online tribute celebration to his life, and so we did that thing you do, but we did it Bambi Kino style, which means Hamburg era cavern Beatles style, instead of the way he wrote it. So that was fun. But it was for a cause as well. So we made a video, and we were all in our own places. Only Mark, Rosa, and I live in New York, and Ira lives in Florida, and Eric lives in L.A. So, but we got it together. Hired a guy to sort of put the videos together, and we're part of that. I did recording for a guy I know named Matthew Waskovich from Cleveland. He has a project called Scarcity of Tanks. That's the general band name, but he forms other bands with people from all over that are called different band names and are different recording projects. So I'm part of a few of those, and they still haven't been released yet, but I guess they're kind of getting close. But I started that in 2020 with him. he already had a bunch of things going. I'm just saying I sort of was part of some of those, and I think those are finally going to see the light of day. Like there's one with Mike Watt and Nels Cline. There's one with some Cleveland folks, Don DePew, who used to be part of Guided by Voices, and some other people there. And there's one with James McNew of Yellow Tango, Brendan Canty, and Des Cadena. With Matthew's singing, Matthew's doing the vocals for all these. And they're more sort of a experimental / punk sort of feel to these things. So that'll be fun. They have different band names. God, there's another one, yeah. Johnny from Crystal Antlers is part of it. Raul from Mike Watt's band, yeah. So Norm Westberg, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to remember the names, but
was the intent to create an ongoing thing?
I don't know. I guess I wasn't there during the inception of that band, but it was mainly Mark, Rozo, and Ira Elliott. And Eric Paparosi was in from the beginning as well. But they formed to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Beatles first going over to Hamburg, that was in 2010. That was the 50th. So now we're in the 63rd. But so we did do that, and we were the only band that really noticed or was doing anything. There weren't any German bands or British bands sort of celebrating their first going over there in August of 1960. So we went and we played the Indra, the very first place they played. We did 4 nights. The European, sort of the NPR of Europe, Arte channel. It's French. It's French and German. They did a whole special on us, and so that was a lot of fun. That's on YouTube, the whole thing. So that's the reason we formed. Then we went back a year later and played a couple shows, and we played some New York shows. And we usually do something at least once a year. We're all on different coasts, so it's hard for us to get together.
One of the things that's interesting to me about it is that, so the inception obviously was connected directly to the Beatles, and kind of everything around the Beatles has been done to death for a good reason. But you it seems like you still managed to find a pretty unique way in.
It's a high concept tribute band, I guess you could say. It's because we do only the covers they did from 60 to 63. That's the basic premise. We wear the leather jackets, but that's about as far as we go as far as costuming. Well, we try to have some sort of Beatle boot, I guess you could say, and sort of period correct guitars. But while I could benefit from one, there are no wigs, nothing like that. But it's a lot of fun, and we do it in that style, but we rock it up a little more too. And what else was I going to say about it? I'm not sure.
I get the sense that the idea behind it isn't to hew as closely to the Beatles versions as possible.
Yeah, we do go from that, though. We sort of we come pretty close to their BBC session versions and Star Club album versions. That's kind of what we go. That's kind of what we go on. Some songs we do live. There aren't any recordings of them doing, so we just kind of go from the originals. There's a couple Fats Domino things we do. There's a couple Ray Charles songs we do. There's no recordings of them doing those songs, so we just kind of do it how we think they would have done it, And we have special guests. We did a record with Mark Lewison this year, the writer, Beatle author. Kind of guest sang a song with us. It was a Joe Brown song, Joe Brown was a guy that he's still around. They covered a lot of his songs. Sort of a Cockney London guy that he wrote sort of countryish songs in a way. And he's the guy that played the ukulele on the Concert for George, if you ever see that. But yeah, he's still around, and he had a pretty good career there in the early 60s. Anyway, but we have a lot of fun with it.
Are there a number of projects like that for you where, it's ostensibly still a group, but they only get together, once every year, once every couple?
That's kind of the only one, I think. But well, there was a Death of Samantha reunion that happened around 2011 and subsequent years. The other guys are kind of based in Cleveland, and I'm here. So we would do a show every now and then, but we were we existed in the 80s, mid to late 80s. That's John Pekovic, and we were on Homestead Records.
What spurred that reunion?
Just kind of a desire to re-record those songs and get them back out. Because everything's out of print, and we just kind of decided to re-record everything, do some shows, just sort of, celebrate it a little bit. That was around 2011 or so. For a few years, we would do a show here and there if it felt right. But Dave James and John from that band are now doing a project called Metro Light. It's more like a sort of a electronic or synth pop sort of a band. I'll help them out. I'll play some guitar every now and then on that. A couple of their things. I mean, they're predominantly electronic, so I only play on stuff I'm asked to. But it's fun to add some subtle guitar to that. Dave James is really great at programming, and it sort of has a early 80s vibe, I'd say. But that's kind of a fun thing.
In a case like that, when you're playing again with this group of guys who you played with, like literally decades before, how quickly does it all come back to you?
As time goes on, it doesn't come back that quickly. I have to go back to the songs and study them again and go, oh, yeah, okay. This goes that way. I remember now. But yeah, it's not immediate sometimes. I mean, it depends on the song, or it depends on how frequently you played it in the past as well.
I mean, clearly it was a good experience, though, if you guys continue to do it every so often.
Yeah, that's a band that's a lot of fun. It's been several years now since we've done anything, but it wasn't meant to be a project we pick back up and make new stuff with either. That wasn't really the intention, but we had our crowd in Cleveland that we had, at the time, 30 plus years ago, that we attracted. And we had some records out on Homestead there, kind of nationally distributed, internationally, I guess. But at that time, it wasn't called indie rock, it was underground. Underground rock, college rock. Mm-hmm.
You actually opened for the Replacements at one point.
Yeah, in '84 we opened up for them in Kent, Ohio. They were on their Let It Be promotional tour. JB's Down is a small club in Kent that we played with them at. I think we did another show somewhere with them as well. that year, the next year, but I don't remember it at all for some reason. There's just no memory of it. I always thought that was the only show we did, and I still think it is, but I'm not sure. But I remember it. It was great. Bob Stinson was wearing a cardboard box as a dress, and they were taking napkin requests, and it's a big drunken bash, you know. But Let It Be was just out, and it was just sort of climbing the college charts, and everyone was really into it. And
you were away from Guided by Voices for a number of years. Was it similar, that experience of reuniting with Bob?
Yeah, I'd say so. Except in that I knew how things worked already. Coming back to it again, it's, you know, I sort of knew the drill, and so it wasn't too hard kind of getting back into it.
In terms of the way the band operates and the I guess the drill, as you said, and the mechanics behind it, is Guided by Voices fairly unique in that respect?
I think so. In years past, though, we were on labels, actual labels that had some major distribution and lots of other bands on their roster. So they limited us to one album a year, maybe two at the tops. No, usually one, you know. And at that time, Bob had other side projects and a side label to get other things out. Other projects that he could sing on and collaborate with folks on. So that was the outlet then, and now there's no need for it because the band has its own label. So I guess that's why we do 3 albums a year, because we fill that, you know, that gap.
I'm always blown away by people like you, or, you know, John Worster is a good example of this, people who just seem to be in so many projects at the same time. But it strikes me that it would be especially difficult if Guided by Voices was one of those projects, just given like the sheer volume of music you're putting into the world.
Yeah, that's true. We drop songs from the live set when we put new ones in. So, and with new albums, there's usually maybe 5 or 6 anymore at the most that we'll put in. But if it's a brand new record. But sort of the subsequent records from recent years past, recent records those will be down to maybe 2 or 3 per album. And then there's there are more classic songs that are always sort of in set list. So it's really not that difficult to make sure you know. As far as learning new songs, you know, there's not that many to make sure you know for live anyway. And the other ones you just need to brush up on, I guess you could say.
Again, something that I'm always curious about with people like you or John is just the pragmatic question of like finding the time to do things and scheduling. You know, and it's hard enough if the bands that you're in release an album every couple of years, but it must be just incredibly difficult to get that schedule together when you're in a band that's both touring and putting out multiple albums in a year.
It is a little bit. We haven't been playing quite as many shows as we used to. When we go out, it's usually for a weekend at a time. and separated by a couple weeks at the least. Most times more, but I think next year it'll ramp up a little bit. So the live schedule isn't as hectic as it used to be.
How would you say your role in Not a Surf is similar or different from Guided by Voices?
I sort of, in Not a Surf, I didn't fill in a lot of the meat of the guitar like I do with GBV. I would play a solo every now and then, or add sort of. I would add some color to the music and add some licks or colorful chords, which is something I really enjoy doing more than making up solos and leads, but. But also, what was different with Not a Surf, I had a hand in sort of helping write every now and then. Some of the songs were more collaborative, and nothing that meaty. But I would come up with an intro or come up with a bridge idea, here and there. And so when they sit down and write a record, it's they get together and kind of bandy about ideas, and Matthew will have a good amount. He'll have a pretty good idea of how he wants the main part to go usually, but it's open to discussion as far as structure, and so everyone has input with that. And Guided by Voices, the songs come fully formed. For the most part, yeah. Songs come fully formed. Excepting the occasions where Bob will say, I want you guys to write a couple songs for the record. Or, hey Doug, we're gonna do this I Am a Tree song. That was back in 96. But the band members did write songs for August by Cake, which was our 2017 album. And that was to kind of fill out the time on a double record. That was a double LP. So each member kind of brought two songs to the table, as well as the ones that Bob had. So that was a lot of fun.
I feel like a dummy because I only just discovered that I Am a Tree is not a Guided by Voices original.
Oh, yeah. Well, it didn't come out. It did come out as under Jem's name, but only after Meg Earwig came out. We'd recorded it back in 93, and I didn't put it on the Jem album that came out in 95. I left it off for some reason, and Bob had already had it on a cassette I gave him of stuff. When Jem opened up for Guided by Voices, and so did Cobra Verde back in the early 90s, and so we were already all friends and everything. And in that one of those times, I gave him a cassette of Jem stuff. Hey, here's what we do, and blah blah blah. So when it came time to record Meg Earwig, he said, "Hey, I like that song. Since you didn't do anything with it, would you mind if we record it?" I said, "No, it'd be great."
That was your first album with GBV, is that right?
Meg Earwig, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't know how many cases of this, I can't think of many off the top of my head, but of, the band leader effectively like bringing an entire band into the fold. And I respect that because, there's no, that this group of guys like play well together and get along. So it's kind of like it's an easy kickstart there.
Yeah. It's kind of like Bob Dylan in the band or something. There's probably better examples. I don't know.
So you sent me the Bambi Kino stuff, and the other thing that you sent me that was really interesting was the Scott Miller collaboration. I want to say it was at the Cake Shop, but shortly after he passed, there was a tribute show, and I'm sure.
Oh right, yeah, I was part of that tribute show.
Yeah,
it was at the Cake Shop. Mm-hmm.
I wasn't super familiar with his music. I just went because like the list of people that were performing are great, but after the event, I really connected with his music. I'm actually looking at it. It's on my bookshelf right now. The Music What Happened book. He was like a great music writer in addition to songwriter.
Yeah.
How did the two of you start working together?
Oh, well, I'd only met him once for a very short period of time, meaning a few minutes. My wife knew him when she lived in the Bay Area a little bit, but she was a big fan. And this wasn't a true collaboration. It's a posthumous collaboration, I guess you could say. So this record, this Supercalifragilistic album came out 2014 or so. No, 2017. I forget, 2016. To little or no fanfare, and it was a very soft release, and I think it's on Bandcamp, but that's about it. And I only kind of remembered it and brought it back up because I think there might be a reissuing coming forth. I'm not sure. Maybe in the next year or so. But at the time, Ken Stringfellow was working closely with the estate, and he got a lot of Scott's song ideas in progress that he hadn't finished. This included voice memos from iPhones and things, and so he assigned a few different people these snippets, and our job was to finish the song. And the one that I got, Say Goodbye, was very hard to decipher what some of the lyrics were or where he was going with the chord progression. So a lot of that I had to sort of make up, and I just kind of imagined Scott's style from, years of listening to Game Theory and Loud Family and stuff like that, what he might have done. And so a lot of that was guesswork. While trying to use as many lyrics as I could make out and as much melody as he had in these sort of disembodied, few second long voice memos from the phone, which was also a strange thing to hear after he was gone, and also not having been that close to him. But it was a challenge, but I enjoyed doing it. Travis played drums on it, Travis Harrison, and he and I recorded that at his studio. And when it was all done, I turned it in, and Ken said, "How about, hey, I want to have Pete Buck play some mandolin over this." I said, "Sure, that'd be great." So that happened. There's a Pete Buck mandolin track on it, and it wasn't really on an official label, so it didn't really get reviewed and didn't really get any press. So, like I said, I don't know what's going to happen with it. It's not official that it's going to be re-released, but I think it's going to be resequenced and gone over a little more.
Yeah, it would be nice if it got a second life. The process is really interesting. The best analogy I can come up with is when they just find like a femur, like a dinosaur femur, and attempt to reconstruct the entire animal based on the one bone.
That was kind of like that. I think John Auer was one of the other folks that got a song like this sort of finish or sort of fill out, you know. So it was quite an undertaking. I made sure to try to put sort of math-like rhythmic parts in, or unorthodox counts, not just straight 4, like Scott may have done. He might not have done anything like the way it turned out.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, you can never know. But he I mean, based on everything I know about him, he did seem like a very mathematically minded person.
Yeah, he was a drafting engineer, I think. He's very mathematically minded, but had a great talent for music, obviously. So
I think just with his stuff, with the game theory stuff in general, it's criminally underrated, but also unheard. You know, he got, when he passed, obviously, you know, some more people reconnected with him, but you know, it's a good opportunity to kind of to expose people to this artist.
Well, they really made a go of it, though. They tried as hard as they could. They made videos. They got on 120 Minutes a few times. You know, MTV did play their stuff. They were on Big Time? I forget what labels. Game Theory was always on. Loud Family, the band after Game Theory, was on some things too. But, you know, independently, indie distributed labels. So, they tried really hard, but didn't really quite break through the mainstream.
It's both kind of frustrating, but also pretty great is when you somehow this band that you end up loving has gone just completely under your radar, and you have this just entire catalog of music to rediscover.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good thing sometimes, you know, because they're not oversaturated, they're undersaturated.
Yeah. And it's also just nice to have like a new vein you can tap for music.
Yeah. There's also a Game Theory tribute record that was in the works. I had already recorded a cover of this song called Dripping with Looks back in, 2014 or something, for an initial sort of Scott Miller tribute record that was going to come out, and then that stopped happening. So these other folks kind of picked up the mantle a couple of years ago, and now I still don't know where it's at. There was a bunch of people slated to contribute, and I turned in my track, gave my track. Jules Verdone was another person that has a track, and lots of other folks too. But it's been a couple of years, and I haven't heard any word about that. I think it was was Omnivore part of it? I know Big Stir Records was part of it. But it was sort of two labels collaborating to do this, and I don't know where the project is right now. So,
what's the status of your solo career at this point?
It's can't really say because I don't know. No, not a big secret at all. But I've been writing and trying to sort of get things together to finish recording. I've started recording things, stopped recording things. I had 3 solo records out. I think the last one was 2014, maybe. Yeah. And those are all in Bandcamp right now, pretty much. But I mean, I've had songs on compilations that have come out during the pandemic and here and there, but it's also sort of the case is everything's all over the place, and you don't know. There aren't really labels anymore. record labels. And you don't know if there is distribution or not. Are you just going to throw it on Spotify? Is it just going to be a Bandcamp album? Is it just going to be what? So when you don't really have a machine behind you or a label, you don't know what things are going to end up on. So, but I think what needs to happen is you just make it and then it'll find its way somewhere. Make things.
There's a sense maybe in which it can be liberating as far as not having to work with a big machine like that. And you do have this platform in Bandcamp, and you could, just release a song or two every so often if that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And that's actually not a bad idea. I've done things here and there, the special occasion songs or whatever. I did a tribute to P-22, the mountain lion that got caught last year and had to be euthanized in the
You did
Hollywood
that for
Hills.
my friend John's show.
Oh, yeah, John Solomon. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's still up there. It's on Bandcamp. I just put it up there for free. But yeah, so nothing more to add really to that. But I just went out there to be part of this benefit for Denny Lane. This happened before he passed, but there's a show at the Troubadour, and there was a lot of people involved. Tim Heidecker, Neil Hamburger, Paul Schaefer was there. Joe Bouchard, bassist of Blue Oyster Cult, was there. Mickey Dolenz, Peter Asher.
That is a wild mix of people.
It was a crazy show. There was a house band, and it was mainly guys who were in Denny's touring band. Eric from Bambi Kino was one of those guys. Alex Jules and Amin and Brian were also part of his band. But anyway, they learned all these songs, and the song that I did was Heartbeat. It's a Buddy Holly song that Denny Lane did on... He had a record called Holly Days out in 1977. An album of Buddy Holly covers that Paul and Linda produced. So that was fun. That exists on YouTube somewhere now, I think, but that was just a couple of weeks ago. And we raised money that, it went to Denny's medical costs